Star Trek Voyager, Starfleet Academy, Lifeline, Chapter 9. Red alert, red alert, all hands to battle stations. Every cadet in the study lounge leaped to their feet. What happened next took them all by surprise. Their feet left the floor. "The gravity's out!" Paul squealed. Everyone slowly floated upward until they were hanging helplessly in midair, eyes wide in shock, mouths gaping. The study lounge tables, like most furniture in the dorm, were bolted in place, so they stayed put. However, chairs, data packs, jackets, pillows, and every other unsecured item rose gently upward, creating a floating obstacle course of debris. "I've never been in zero-G before," Cadet Lisa Kearney yelled, trying to make herself heard over the still blaring klaxon. "What do we do now?" "How do we get to our posts?" someone else in the floating crowd complained. "Swim for it," Kearney suggested. She started flapping her arms about, trying to maneuver herself down so she could grab the lip of the table, but her weightless gyrations only sent her into an uncontrolled tumble in the opposite direction. "Help!" she cried as her arm struck a floating data pack and sent it sailing across the room where it smacked someone else in the forehead. "Ouch!" the victim yelped. Flailing helplessly, Kearney's arm bumped someone to her right, and her leg kicked someone to her left. Those cadets were knocked into their own spins, and before long half the cadets in the room were slowly tumbling head over heels, helpless to do anything about it. The errant data pack continued to sail through the air, bouncing against walls and cadets until Theda Mar caught it with her feet. "Everybody stop flapping around and just relax," Catherine called, putting as much authority as she could into her voice. Just her luck, she was stuck in a room full of space newbies. Catherine had experienced zero-G several times, thanks to her father's position in Starfleet. She knew that maneuvering without any weight or leverage was difficult, but not impossible. "The best thing to do is grab a stationary object, but do it slowly." "I'm gonna throw up," threatened one of the spinners. "Oh, don't, please," Dunkirk begged. "Everybody calm down," repeated Catherine. "I'll try to reach the bookshelf and clear this whole mess up." Slowly, so that she didn't send herself into a helpless spin as well, Catherine stretched out one arm. Her fingertips were a mere 2 inches from the edge of the bookcase, but there was no way for her to propel herself forward. With an angry growl, she stretched her whole body, trying like mad to grow 2 inches so she could touch that bookcase. But it was simply out of reach. Then a little voice in Catherine's head said, "Flying solo isn't easy, kid. If you think it's hard now, wait until your problems are real." Catherine gasped as a sudden realization dawned on her. "Flying solo," she thought. "Is that what I've been trying to do?" Theda Mar's sharp voice yanked Catherine out of her reverie. "This is ridiculous. Nobody can reach anything. Mallet's going to find us hanging in here like a bunch of jerks." "No, he's not," Catherine said, her vision clear now for the first time since arriving at the academy. "Not if we work together." She twisted around until she could see Thrum. "Take my hand." Thrum hesitated. "Why?" "Look, I know you're mad at me," said Catherine, "and you have every right to be, but right now we need to work together for everyone's benefit." Thrum slowly stretched out her hand. Turning carefully, Catherine barely managed to touch the furry fingertips. "Okay, now gently push me over to the wall." Thrum pushed Catherine away. In doing so, she also propelled herself back to the opposite wall. Both Catherine and Thrum gently hit the flat surfaces and kicked off again and floated across the room, pushing against the other cadets until everyone had been maneuvered to a wall or piece of stationary furniture. The spinning cadets righted themselves, sighing with relief. Barely a minute had passed since the klaxon started to ring, but 1 minute wasted in a drill was far too long. Catherine knew they had to move fast. "Everybody listen up," she said. "My father told me about a zero-G trick he learned in space. Now everybody hold hands." Within moments, the study lounge cadets had formed a long body chain and were hurling each other down the hallways to their stations. Since the hallways were bare, no loose objects created obstacles, so the technique was safe and it quickly caught on. Soon cadets were zipping through the air on every floor, reaching their posts with record speed. Catherine decided to throw all caution to the wind and grabbed Dunkirk's arm, grinning at him. "Okay, Frost, let's get to our station." He looked at her with surprise, but he didn't pull away. Right." They hurled each other down the corridor, dodging their floating peers as the klaxon continued to howl. "Get in here," called Hallie Coogan, pulling them into the lift. Other cadets struggled to float inside as Catherine said to Coogan, "Well, look who's not the only one wearing a uniform this time." She grinned at him, adding, "Get used to it, Coog." And she winked at Dunkirk. He stared back, obviously wondering at the sudden change in her attitude. Suddenly, Catherine's grin faded as the lift doors closed. Realization dawned too late. "Wait a minute, don't!" she began, but someone activated the lift and it started its swift descent. In that instant, every cadet floating in the small cubicle was smashed up against the ceiling. Except for Catherine, they were all caught by surprise, and in their haste to orient themselves, they only managed to get caught in a tangle. By the time the lift stopped, the cadets were a compressed knot of arms and legs, bruised shins, and snagged hair. "Look at my dose!" came a nasal cry from somewhere in the floating mass. "Get your boot out of my face!" yelled somebody else. "Stop pulling on my arm!" shouted a third. "It's not supposed to bend that way!" Catherine was floating free from the waist up, but her legs were still tangled in with everybody else. "Dunkirk, where are you?" She tried to twist around and find him, but somebody's head blocked her view. Then she heard him giggle. It had to be Dunkirk. Only he could possibly find this disaster amusing. "Wow, some crackerjack Starfleet cadets we are," he cackled, laughing harder. The sound of it was contagious. Other cadets started to laugh, and in seconds the whole floating, writhing mass of tangled teenagers was shrieking with hilarity. Everyone, that is, except Catherine. "This isn't funny," she shouted at them, still struggling to pull her legs free. "We've got to get to our stations. Don't you people realize the gravity of the situation?" All laughter stopped dead, leaving Catherine's words hanging in the air as much as the cadets themselves. "The gravity of the situation?" came Dunkirk's voice. "The gravity?" He broke into laughter again, and everybody followed suit. Catherine blinked. A giggle escaped her. "Gravity of the situation." Another giggle slipped out. "I can't believe I said that. The gravity of..." She started to laugh. "Wasn't that a joke from Star Trek V? Didn't Captain Kirk say... No, it was Spock who said it, and Captain... Oh, forget it." She started to laugh. Her laughter grew, and the more she tried to stop, the harder she ended up laughing. Her fellow cadets weren't perfect, that was for sure, but neither was she. Catherine laughed with them. She laughed at them. She laughed at herself. She laughed so hard she feared her stomach muscles were going to snap. Instead, something else snapped. The holocam in Ensign Hott's hands. He was peeking around the corner into the lift and aiming the camera at them. "Say cheese," he said, and snapped another holopic. Through tears of laughter, Catherine noticed that Hott was standing firmly on the floor. He must have been wearing a pair of gravity boots. Also, the klaxon wasn't blaring anymore. Even the red alert lights in the hallway had stopped flashing.
The drill's over,
Hot told them.
Prepare yourselves for normalization of environment.
With a burst of efficiency that startled Catherine, the cadets untangled themselves and maneuvered their bodies head up, feet down. When the gravity returned, they all dropped gently to the floor. Ta-da! Dunkirk said jovially. Hot pointed a blue finger at him.
See how funny it all is when Mallet hears about this,
he warned.
All cadets report to the study lounge immediately.
What are you going to do with the pictures? Theodemar asked, indicating Hot's holocam. Hot patted the camera.
Music for the yearbook. I knew you guys would take the lift in 0G. Somebody always does.
Mallet was waiting for them in the study lounge. The place was a mess, with chairs and study gear strewn about. Cadets picked items up at random as they entered, clearing enough space for everyone to gather for what Catherine assumed would be a big lecture. This ought to be fun, Pole growled softly. Dunkirk patted her arm. Calm down, Pole. Your hackles are rising. Contrary to Pole's fears, Mallet didn't lecture them at all, even the cadets who took the lift. Taking a lift in 0G is about as stupid a mistake as is possible to make, he told them flatly. But every year someone makes it. This class, in fact, will forever carry the distinction of having the most 0G ignorant cadets in quite a few years. Someone actually had the nerve to applaud. When nobody joined in, the clapping awkwardly stopped. Cadet Coogan, boomed Mallet, you'll see me in my office afterward. Hallie Coogan automatically hid his hands behind his back. Yes, sir, he choked. Catherine liked sleepless Coogan, but she couldn't help but grin. So much for perfection, she thought with a wicked sense of satisfaction. Maybe we should call him Clappa Coogan from now on. It's easy to forget the simple rules of logic in an emergency situation, Mallet continued. That's why we have drills. I suggest we keep our wits about us next time. One side of his mouth quirked up. That is all, cadets. Dismissed! Everyone headed back to their rooms, but Catherine had to find her study materials first. As she poked through piles of debris, she was joined by Dunkirk, Thrum, and Pole. So, Janeway, back there in the elevator, that was the first joke I've ever heard you make, said Dunkirk. It was pretty funny. You never told me you had a sense of humor. You never asked, Catherine replied. Dunkirk shrugged. Gee, I didn't know I had to. You didn't. Catherine rallied her courage and said what should have been said days earlier. Look, all of you, you want to apologize, began Pole. For being a grizzbucket, finished Thrum helpfully. Catherine's eyebrows shot up. I haven't been that bad, have I? Worse, Dunkirk said. Infinitely worse. He turned to the twins. What's a grizzbucket? Catherine took a blind stab at a definition. Somebody who's a foolish, pig-headed spoiler, she said. Thrumpole nodded that she was in the general ballpark. I'm sorry for being one, I really am, Catherine went on. I just lost perspective. Her voice tried to give out on her, but she vowed never to let that old bad habit come back again. She forced the words out. Will you forgive me? Dunkirk folded his arms and glanced at the twins. How about it, cadets? Should we forgive her? Thrumpole screwed up their faces as if calculating a highly complex math equation in their heads. Then they said in perfect unison, All right, you're hereby forgiven. Just do us one favor, said Dunkirk. Put Superwoman away. Life can be just as challenging, but a whole lot easier if you let somebody else help once in a while, you know? Help once in a while, thought Catherine. Help once in... That's it, she cried. Holy cow, that's it. What's it? Dunkirk asked. You were right. I'm a bona fide first-class grizzbucket." And with that, Catherine grabbed Pole's hands and started running after Mallet. Mallet heard them coming and turned around. "Cadets, you've been dismissed," he said sternly. "Sorry, sir," said Catherine, breathless. "But I've got it. I think I've got it. Pole and I request permission to go to the Hollow Center, sir." Mallet's brows drew together. "Now?" "Yes, sir." "What for?" Pole asked, as mystified as Mallet. "Because," Catherine told him, "I know the answer to the greasy test." Chapter 10. Cadet Group Commander Mallet stared at Catherine with that look in his eye, the same look he'd used the first time they'd met. As she had then, Catherine felt as if the man were drilling a hole straight into her brain with his eyes so that he could examine her thoughts firsthand. "You want to try your solution now, 15 minutes before the Hollow Center closes?" he asked. "Yes, sir." Catherine squeezed Pole's hand a little tighter. "We do." Pole took one look at Catherine's determined expression and said simply, "Right." One side of Mallet's mouth quirked up. "Very well, then. Permission granted." Catherine rocketed out the door so fast that Pole had to run to catch up with her. "So what's the solution?" the diasman demanded. "And why do we have to do it now?" "I'll explain everything when we get there," Catherine replied. "As for why we have to do it now, well, there's no time like the present." They reached the Hollow Center and, because of the late hour, easily found an empty suite. After quickly setting the program, Catherine found herself standing in the emitter control room of the Starship Argonaut for the 36th and hopefully last time. "Okay," she said to Pole, "listen carefully. I have discovered that one great characteristic of the Grizzbucket is its amazing inability to see the obvious, even if the obvious is sitting right in front of its face waving a flag." Pole giggled but said nothing. "As much as I'd like to conquer the world all by myself, I have to accept that it can't be done. Not as far as this test is concerned, anyway." Catherine gestured to herself. "This Grizzbucket will now assume her post at the team leader console, and she requests that you take your post as the team." "Together," said Catherine, emphasizing the word. "I believe we can solve this thing. What do you say?" Pole's arm suddenly twitched. Her grin faded. "I'll do my best," she said, hesitation creeping into her voice. Catherine placed her hand on the diasman's arm. "Pole, we have a job to do, and it has to be done despite how we both feel. If you don't crumble without Thrum's support, I won't try to run the whole show. Agreed?" The muscles in Pole's arm relaxed. Summoning her resolve, she nodded. "Agreed." "Right." Catherine glanced at her chrono. "We've got 7 minutes to do this before the Hollow Center closes. Let's get it right the first time. Computer, run program." Slowly, majestically, the serene blue sphere of Epsilon 1 began to rotate on the view screen. Readouts throughout the simulated control room sprang to life, softly chirping and beeping. Catherine's eyes raced over her telltales, taking in all the variables and readying herself for the onslaught of activity that would occur once the routine was underway. She fought the impulse to glance over her shoulder to check Pole's console readouts as well, summoning all her willpower to keep her attention focused on her own work. "Trust her, Catherine," she commanded herself. "You're not flying solo anymore." "I'm ready," came Pole's voice, firm with confidence. "Acknowledged." Catherine braced herself, then said, "Bridge, emitter control room standing by." "Acknowledged, emitter control," said the Argonaut science officer over the comm. "Initialize stabilization process." Initializing stabilization process Janeway Mark 36. And may the 36th time be the charm. The soft chorus of chirps and beeps in the room grew faster and faster as readouts shifted with increasing speed. Data stream ready, reported Catherine. Substation's online and working, Paul added. From the bridge, the science officer suddenly said, Emitter control, geothermal levels are rising. Stations 2 and 7 heading for critical. Luminous red flowers bloomed on Catherine's status display. Acknowledged, said Catherine, her fingers dancing over the controls. Shifting loads across stations 1, 5, 9, and 12. The flowers cooled back to green. Station's back within safety margins, Paul chimed in. Geothermal is stable! Bridge, this is engineering, came a new voice over the comm speaker. Warp generators operating at 110% of rated capacity. This level is sustainable for only a short time. Seconds would be better than minutes, sir. Acknowledged, engineering, said the science officer. Emitter control, status. Immediately, Paul reported. Substations holding. Core field readings within specs. Containment is now feasible. Quietly pleased at the diaceman's efficiency, Catherine reported, Containment field forming. She held her breath as a glowing ball surrounded Epsilon 1's core on the schematic display. A sudden flood of data hit the console as all 12 planetary substations twisted the fabric of space itself to defy the resistance of gravity and mass to reshape the structure of a planet. Catherine's fingers danced across the control surfaces, persuading red lights to turn green, but there were too many red lights and her fingers too few and too slow to stem the crimson tide. Lights suddenly began cooling to green, and Catherine was dimly aware that a second pair of hands was dancing across her board. A rhythm developed between the four hands, crossing lightly over to tap out new red blooms. 20 fingers danced an intricate improvised ballet of cooperation and control. Containment field established, crowed Paul, as the last red light faded to green. Bridge, the core is contained. Estimated stabilization in, Catherine calculated swiftly, 40 seconds. This is going to be close, Bridge, warned engineering. Catherine swallowed. Please, don't make everything blow up again, please, please, please. For 40 infinitely long seconds, she watched her console readouts so closely she forgot to even breathe. Her hands moved across the touchpads automatically now, keeping everything in her jurisdiction under control. Behind her, she could hear Paul, back at her own console, booping and beeping as the diaceman kept the rest of the job under control as well. A light on Catherine's instrument panel flashed. She inhaled with a gasp. Bridge, the core containment bubble has reshaped the core fields, reducing field strength. Stand by. Field strength reducing, Paul called out. A long moment passed. It looks like it's going to hold, Paul shouted. We did it! Catherine exhaled deeply. Bridge, stabilization accomplished. Acknowledged, emitter control. Engineering, get those warp generators back down. Cutting warp power, Bridge. Disengaging generators from emitter. We're clear. Emitter control, status. Giddy with success, Catherine said. Geothermal levels dropping to normal, sir. All substations online and maintaining new core configuration, added Paul. Catherine caught Paul's eye and grinned. Bridge, Epsilon 1 is stable. With a gentle shimmer, the emitter control room of the Starship Argonaut disappeared, leaving Catherine standing in the empty holosuite with Paul. Congratulations, came the bland voice of the computer. You have passed the test. Catherine wasn't sure which of them whooped the loudest, but both she and Pohl let out a yell and hugged each other, hardly fitting behavior for Starfleet cadets. Catherine didn't care. For once, she just didn't care. "We did it!" she cried. "We did it! We did it! We did it!" "Ah!" Pohl repeated, clapping her furry hands in glee. "And see?" She lifted her arm. "I'm not twitching." Ah! Their battles won. Catherine and Pohl returned to Sudak Hall and reported to Mallet's office. Despite the late hour, Catherine knew he'd still be there. As she suspected, he'd been monitoring their progress. "Congratulations, cadets," he said when they entered. He raised an eyebrow at Catherine. "You see, there was a solution." Catherine blushed with embarrassment, but she remained standing at attention. Admitting a mistake and enduring the consequences was part of being a good Starfleet officer. "Yes, sir, there was. I suppose I didn't see that solution because I was looking for a fault in the scenario, not in myself." "Not all tests are purely intellectual," said Mallet. "As for you, Cadet Pohl, I'm pleased to see you beginning to handle your separation anxieties. You and your sister are making admirable progress." Pohl grinned. "Thank you, sir." "Now, the hour is late, and I'm sure we're all tired after such a trying evening. That will be all, cadets. Dismissed." Pohl left first. Just as Catherine was about to follow her out, Mallet said, "Oh, and Cadet Janeway." She turned. "Yes, sir." He picked up a program chip from his desk. "You know as well as I that you don't need this anymore. However, I shall unofficially hold it for you until graduation. Do you understand?" "I think I do, sir," said Catherine. "I think I do." Chapter 11. Early the next morning, Catherine headed for CGC Mallet's office as ordered. But just as she reached the main lounge on the first floor, she stopped dead at the sight of a Starfleet officer sitting on a couch near the CGC's door. The officer was a vice admiral. Specifically, the officer was Vice Admiral Edward Janeway. "Daddy!" Catherine blurted in surprise. Her father smiled and stood. "Hello, Golden Bird. I see you've managed to survive until I got here." Catherine's first impulse was to run into his arms, but she quickly checked herself. "You're a Starfleet cadet now," she thought. "Daddy will want to see you act like one." Keeping her pace at a steady walk, but grinning like mad at the same time, Catherine approached her father. "Hi, Daddy." To her surprise, he drew her into a warm bear hug. "What is this? You're acting like an old retired admiral already," he commented dryly. "The academy must be a lot stricter nowadays than when I was a cadet." He gestured at Catherine's uniform. "You look good," he said with evident pride. Catherine beamed. "I still can't believe I'm really wearing this. Sometimes I do a double take when I see myself in the mirror." "Wait until you start collecting pips." Vice Admiral Janeway gestured at the couch. "Sit down. Tell me what you've been up to." They sat, but Catherine didn't know where to begin. There was so much to tell her father, but she was still stunned at seeing him. First, he hadn't come when she'd expected him, and now he was there when she didn't expect him. She didn't know if she should feel angry or happy or something in between. "Take Amelia's advice," she finally thought. "Don't be mad at him. Just be proud of him." "It hasn't been easy," she said, "but I think I'm settling in now." She told him about Thrumpole and her classes and the dorm drills, ending with, "CGC Mallet's really got his eye on me, though." She jerked a thumb at Mallet's closed office door. "When he goes back to his duties as a chair of the sciences department, I have a feeling he's going to run me ragged." "It'll be good for you," Janeway said, only half jokingly. Let's face it, you haven't chosen an easy life path, Golden Bird, but you have chosen a fulfilling one. I'm glad to see you're handling it well. The events of the past 2 weeks flashed like a speeded up holopic through Catherine's mind. I'm handling it as best as I can, she thought. Then she noticed her father grow somber. Catherine, he said slowly, I owe you an apology. I promised to come with you on your first day at the academy, but I didn't. I hope you understand that the Vulcan Conference was no small matter. The meeting I had to attend after that was crucial as well. Catherine's throat felt as if a small planet were lodged there. She swallowed, willing her voice not to give out on her. I understand, Daddy. It's okay. You sure? He looked deep into her eyes. I know how much that day meant to you. Catherine nodded, more sure now than ever. The look on his face at that moment was all the apology she could ever want. Don't worry about it. Good. I'm glad you're not angry with me, because that would spoil my plans. Plans? Catherine asked hopefully. That's right. I have 3 days on Earth before I have to go to Alpha Centauri, and I intend to spend 2 of them here in San Francisco. Really? Catherine hugged her father tight. 2 whole days? Well, Janeway paused. There are 1 or 2 meetings I must attend at Starfleet headquarters, but Catherine pulled back. How many? 1 tomorrow afternoon and 1... He glanced at his wrist chrono. Oh, right about now. As if on cue, CGC Mallet's door whooshed open, and Mallet's head poked through. He looked at Catherine. Ah, Cadet Janeway. I see you and the Vice Admiral have found each other. Excellent. He turned to Catherine's father. Just a couple more minutes, Ed, he said, and disappeared back into his office again. Catherine's eyes bugged. You 2 know each other? Commander Mallet told me to report first thing in the morning. He knew you were going to be here. Janeway was amused by his daughter's reaction. Etienne and I served together years ago. Way too many years ago, he added, fingering the gray hairs at his temple. He's an amazing man, Catherine. You'll learn a lot from him. Believe me, I already have, Catherine said earnestly. But what are you 2 going to do right now? Breakfast. Despite her best efforts, Catherine knew her expression registered disappointment. Her father noticed. Now, don't worry, Golden Bird. I'll be back within an hour. If I didn't know him better, I'd suspect that Etienne just wanted to ask my advice on how to handle you. Catherine knew her father was kidding with her, but she still cringed a little with the thought that Mallet might tell him about Amelia. Mallet is tough, but he'd never embarrass me like that, she thought. Calming her anxiety, she decided it was time she started to trust other people more. Start with your own father, Catherine. After all, he never really let you down, did he? Give Mallet a chance, too. Mallet's office door opened again, and this time the CGC stepped out, his manners as crisp as his commander's uniform. Shall we, Ed? Janeway stood up. 1 hour, he promised Catherine. She just stared at the 2 men, maybe a little too boldly. Her first impression of Mallet had been right. He was the same height as her father. The 2 somehow even looked like friends. They both stood with the same proud posture. They both stared back at her with piercing gazes, and they both smiled the same smile, that little quirk at one corner of their mouths. No wonder Mallet always watched her so closely, and no wonder he'd known to assign her the greasy test. He knew her better than she ever could have guessed. The 2 officers grew impatient. That will be all, Cadet, they said, both at the same time, and with the same inflection, almost like Thrumpole. Dismissed! Catherine jumped at the sound of their sharp voices, and she saw the twinkle in her father's eyes, and she started to laugh. That's when she caught sight of the wall chrono. Oh my gosh, I'm late for class. Catherine dashed away to face another day. at Starfleet Academy. Her spirit's high and her future bright.